This is your Thursday Daily Delivery. I am Michael Rand. Before we get too deep into this show, I want to mention something to you. If you are around the noon hour on Thursday, join myself, Jim Suhan, and Lavelle E. Neal III for a discussion of this year's Twins team live video on StarTribune.com. You can submit questions to me via Twitter at Randball. If you miss it by any chance, I'm going to turn it into a bonus podcast, by the way, that should get posted later today, probably in the 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock range once that live video is over. So pay attention for that. Lots of Twins talk in that. Twins at 14-27, the worst record in the American League right now. Coming up on this show in a little bit, Chip Scoggins will help me set up tonight's big game, Wild Game 3 at XL Energy Center against Vegas. Chip had a good column in Thursday's paper and StarTribune.com about Kirill Kaprizov and his local Russian supporters. Check that out as well. Also, we'll have my good internet friend Chickenfinger69 on the show because he could not possibly be angrier about NHL refereeing at this point. But first, what did I miss? Hey guys, consider me a fan of a gimmick. You know me, I don't like the baseball runner on second to start extra innings that they put into play last year and carried into this year. I don't like the 7-inning doubleheaders. One thing I do like, though, because it doesn't fundamentally change the game itself, I love the NBA play-in tournament. Having watched it a couple nights in a row now, 3 things about it I really like that I want to share with you right now. First, it gives more teams a chance to extend their season, right? Because you get 10 teams now, not officially into the playoffs, but 10 teams from each conference, 20 in the whole league, that have a chance now to extend their season. Because, the way the play-in tournament works, the top 6 in each conference, they're in the playoffs no matter what. 7 through 10 have to play it out in these play-in tournaments for 2 spots in each conference. It's a little bit convoluted, but it makes sense once you think about it. 7 versus 8. They play 1 game, winner gets in. 9 versus 10, they play 1 game. The winner of that plays the loser of the 7-8 game, and the winner of that goes to the playoffs as the 8th seed. I get it. It's a little hard to wrap your head around, but when you see it play out, it makes sense. So it gives teams more of a chance to extend their season. I don't think that's a bad thing. I think particularly if you are a Timberwolves fan right now, that should be something you're eyeballing next season. Like, hey, I don't know if the Timberwolves are a top 8 team next year, especially if they don't get a draft pick, especially if they're not able to make all the trades they want to make. But hey, they were 16-20 in the second half of this season, over a 82-game schedule that could put them in the mix for 35, 38 wins. Maybe they're a little bit better than that. They should be on the fringes at the very least of that 10 spot, and maybe that's something that they can aspire to next year to get at least in the mix to possibly be able to extend their season and get into the official top 8 and the playoffs. So I like the fact that more teams have a chance to extend their season. I think it makes the league more competitive overall. I know there were still some teams that tank this year. That's just going to happen. You can't make every team good magically, but it does give more teams something to play for as the season goes along. It also gives, the really good elite teams, it creates some separation between them and the bottom of the conference. It makes a top 6 finish extra incentivized, right? Because now not only are you in automatically if you finish top 6, you get 5 days of rest, right? You get the regular season ended Sunday. Home court advantage doesn't matter all that much in sports these days, especially, when you consider that it's only 1 extra home game. But that rest, that is a huge deal. Last thing, creates immediate postseason drama. Basically, every 7-8 game is like game 6 where both teams are up 3-2, right? Because the incentive in that game is to close it out. You're through automatically. And the loser of that game essentially goes to what would be a Game 7 because then it's a winner-take-all elimination game. Same thing in the 9-10 game except in reverse. Both of those games are like 3-2 in a series in a Game 6, but both teams are in the losing position at that point. So whoever loses is done. Whoever wins gets to go to what essentially becomes a Game 7. We're going to see one of those tonight with Indiana and Washington. We'll see another one on Friday with Golden State and Memphis. So I really like this play-in idea. I didn't know if I would, but it's got some legs. I hope they keep it, and I think it's something that could not only benefit basketball, but the Timberwolves next season.
I'm Nyla Jean Myers, Senior Assistant Sports Editor at the Star Tribune. Thank you for listening to Strip Sports Daily Delivery. This work is made possible by our Star Tribune subscribers. For unlimited access to the articles mentioned in this podcast and our coverage of Minnesota sports from pros to preps, go to startribune.com/subscribe.
Welcome back to Daily Delivery. Chip Scoggins, Star Tribune columnist, going to writing the advanced column. It's on startribune.com Thursday and in your Star Tribune Thursday, getting you ready for Game 3 of Wild against Vegas. Let's talk about that story before we get into some of the matchup, back and forth of this series. You went and watched Game 2 with a bunch of Kirill Kaprizov fans. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so I had, the last couple of weeks I've been thinking of wondering if there's a Russian fan group locally that, is excited about Kaprizov and the season he's had. And, I don't know how big the Russian community is here in Minnesota, but so I contacted a Wild and they said, yeah, but, it's funny you mentioned that because a group from this couple guys from this fan group had brought over we'll call it a poster, but it's a pretty cool, professionally done poster that they had made to kind of celebrate his first hat trick that he got in mid-March. And so I contacted them, and they have it's a Facebook group. It's called the Russian Speaking Minnesota Wild Fans. And so they're fans of the Wild, but they're, more so Kaprizov, and there's about 160 of them, and they're hoping to grow it. And really the idea was, one, to connect and have, friends to talk to, but more so to hopefully get the word to Kaprizov that, hey, there's a Russian community here and a culture here that, you're 24 and coming to this new place and you don't really speak English. But there is a community here that you can reach out to, that there's Russian supermarkets and restaurants, and they have concerts, and they're just, basically a support group that, you're not alone. You're not in this, strange new place by yourself. And so, yeah, I went and hung out with them, and it's a couple of the founders are, really good guys. They've been here for years. They came over as college students. One got his master's degree from Purdue in computer science, and one got his MBA at St. Thomas. And they just kind of made this their home. And really, just the excitement of what Kaprizov has brought to this team in this market has really kind of spread through their fan group, and their kids are now excited about hockey because of Kirill. And so, yeah, I had a chance we went to Cowboy Jacks in Plymouth Tuesday night and hung out with those guys. I mean, they've been wanting to get together more but obviously with the pandemic, it's prevented this. So this is kind of like their first, real big outing. And obviously at 9 p.m. puck drop on a work night is not ideal for that, but they had a good time, and they all had their number 97 jerseys on. So it was cool. That's
good. I love that story. And, unfortunately they didn't see exactly what they wanted to see, I'm sure, in that game.
Yeah.
Kaprizov, shut out again, and, takes that penalty in the end that, snuffs out any chance at a late rally, but a cool story nonetheless. And,
yeah,
it's not like, Kaprizov's definitely had his chances. Doesn't seem like the moment here is too big for him. So maybe he'll get it going a little bit more in Game 3.
Yeah. And I listened to Dean Evson's Zoom call today before they flew back from Vegas. And it's obvious when you watch the game that, and we talked about this, Mike, Vegas put him number one on the list in our scouting report. I mean, they're giving him a ton of attention, really trying to be physical with him. And we saw that late in the regular season with that one game where they really tried to rough him up to kind of get him off his game. He scored twice in that game, but we saw last night he took another slashing or a cross-check penalty, drew a reaction from the Wild. So they're really trying to be physical with him. I think being at home and having last change, you'll be able to get the matchups that you want probably a little more. But I do think even though he hasn't scored, I agree with you that it doesn't look like the stage is too big or anything like that. He's blocking shots. He's setting team up. So he just hasn't finished. Hasn't had a lot of shots. I think 5 in 2 games. But I'll be curious to see kind of what adjustments the Wild make to get more favorable matchups now that they have the shifts back here at home.
Yeah, good point on the last line change. That definitely helps you offensively, and you get more of those golden opportunities probably against matchups that you like, and getting him into those more favorable situations. They're going to have to score more than they have so far. I wanted to bring this up with you. I mean, I talked about it on Wednesday's show, but 2 goals in 2 games, even if they're playing at a certain level, I thought they played 2 smart road games, and a split was probably a justified outcome based on everything we saw in Sunday and Tuesday's game. But I also, you start to get a little bit of flashbacks of playoff appearances gone awry before, especially I talked about this 2017 where you got chances all up and down the ice against the Blues, and then you just get to the end and you say, just snake bitten. Like at a certain point, you got to put the pucks in the net as opposed to winning the chance battle. So I'm a little concerned that this familiar narrative is starting to play out again.
Yeah, and I wrote about this as a preview to playoffs that kind of tied around Kaprizov, in that they finally feel like they have a true goal scorer. And I'd even put Fiala in that category too. But that's the one thing, it did drive me crazy during all those postseason flameouts that we heard it after every game and every series, like, oh, we got our chances. We're right there. We're just knocking on the door. We keep getting ourselves chances. Like, yeah, but you have to finish them. I mean, that's the whole point. I mean, it's yes, it's great to get chances, but you have to be able to finish them. And that's where I guess I'm not as concerned maybe as you are, because when I looked at those teams, I didn't see a lot of high-end finishers. Whereas I look at this team, I with Kaprizov, and I know he's a rookie and he hasn't been through the playoffs yet, so it's still to be determined. But from what we've seen during the regular season in Fiala, I just feel like they have more high-end skill and guys that are more natural goal scorers. And so, yes, they need to finish them, but I think we do need to, credit Fleury. The way he's played has been dynamite. And Vegas is a good team. I mean, defensively, I think they gave up the fewest goals. We're the best defensive team in the NHL this year. So it's not as fast-paced as it is, and back and forth sometimes. I think we tend to think that might be a 5-4 type game, or 5-4 type, series, scores, high score. But it's 2 good defensive teams, and so it may be a lot of 2-1 games. And so, but yes, they definitely need to figure out whether it's matchups or I don't know that Efson's going to do any lineup change, but they need to get Kaprizov more, get him going, more shots, more opportunities, and just as a group, they need to be able to finish.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't think I'm at the point of concern yet. It's just, the 2 goals they have scored haven't exactly been high-end finishes. One was a screen, one was a shot off a skate. So, they, even if they do have these high-end finishers, we haven't seen the result. But absolutely, I even when they got Parisi, even when they had, some of these other guys like, Granlund, Niederreiter had a little bit of sniper to him when he was going well.
Yeah.
But they've not had guys like Fiala and Kaprizov. They can just flat out shoot the puck and just make an individual play that scores you a goal the way these guys do.
Yeah, and I thought Fiala was outstanding last night.
He was great. He
played. I mean, to me, the 2 guys that really stood out were him and Dumba. I thought Dumba really was engaged, the way he was blocking shots. I love playoff hockey when you see a guy just throw his body face first into a guy widening up for a shot. And it's like, you just see kind of the will and the courage that these guys have to sacrifice their body to block a shot, which I'm sure just does not feel good when you catch one in the ankle or wherever. So, but I thought Fiala and Dumba were really great last night, and I think they've played 2 good games. I feel like they've been the better team. Fleury has obviously period 1 of game 1 they weren't right. Played there, but I love their start last night. Period 2 wasn't great, I didn't think. But I think they flying home today, they probably feel like they played 2 pretty good games.
Yeah, I agree with that. I don't know if they've had the better of the play. Maybe that's where we disagree a little bit. I think it's been pretty even at least.
Yeah, you're right.
I think
you're right.
I think the team that won each game probably wasn't the one that deserved to win each game. It probably would have been, results wise, it probably could have been flip flops. I think Vegas was probably on balance the better team in game 1. Could have been up 1-0, 2-0 after that first period, and then it's a totally different game. And then game 2 kind of felt like the Wild tilted it in their favor, even got the first goal eventually, but didn't get rewarded. But they come home 1-1. It's if you went into the series and you said you're going to go back home 1-1, I think both teams would probably say, nah, okay. I mean, it's fine. Vegas would probably rather be up 2-0. The Wild would say after we won game one, we had a chance to do that and didn't, but it's kind of a neutral series at this point. And then game three, obviously a huge pivot point in one direction or the other.
Sure. And I think even's probably neutral's the right way. And I thought going in, this felt like a 7-game series, and nothing about the first 2 games has swayed me from that. I feel like this is going 7. I just feel like these are 2 about as evenly matched teams as you can get, Yeah. And it's going to come down to, you look at their Vegas' second goal last night. I mean, I'm sure Talbot probably would like to get his glove on that and corral it cleanly. And it's just one little hiccup, that's what it comes down to, really. And so I'm curious to see what attendance. What are we saying? 5,000 they're allowing in?
Is that what it is? I hadn't seen for sure, but that sounds about right. And that's a good point because it's not going to be what it was in Vegas. No. I don't know what the difference between 5,000 and 9,000 is in terms of volume, but I will say that watching those 2 games on TV felt about as close to normal as it's felt to watch a hockey game in a while. I just haven't felt that kind of fan energy or seen as many, I know they put some of the coloring in the seats to kind of mask the empty seats, but even just the kind of murmur, the din that you hear from a bigger crowd, you could feel that in those games. And that's a more distinct home ice advantage that they have with the bigger crowd.
And they do, and it's weird because our point of reference has been changed so much that it's amazing that 9,000 feels like a sellout, like it's Rockets. So can you imagine when these buildings do get back to full capacity, what it's going to be like and how fun that's going to be? But after what we've been through, that felt like a definite home ice advantage. So I don't know what, I assume it'll be fairly loud in XL Energy Center Thursday night, but it'll be interesting to see what kind of impact that has, if any.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I got you here, Chip. Last thing. I had Chris Hine on Wednesday's show. We kind of broke down all things Timberwolves. That season ended Sunday, so we probably won't talk Wolves for quite some time. I asked him, I think the Wolves, if you listen to Gerson Rosas, they think they have 5 guys. Rosas had an interesting thing that he told Chris, and it was in one of Chris's recent stories, that to feel really good about kind of where your franchise is headed, you got to kind of have 7 or 8 guys on your roster that you feel really good about, your kind of core players. And he identified 5 that they feel like they have right now, which was the 2 rookies this year, Edwards and McDaniels, plus Towns, Beasley, and Russell. What's your take on that? And how do they get from 5 to 7 or 8 when they really only have about a 28% chance of keeping their draft pick this year? Yeah,
and I thought that was very enlightening too, that kind of how they feel about their roster right now,
Jarrett Culver is probably like, that doesn't sound good.
Well, I wonder how close Naz Reid is to being in that group.
Yeah, I think Naz Reid is certainly part of the rotation, but I don't know if he's part of like your core. Like I feel like you think about your core as like not necessarily untouchable, but the guys that you're like, you guys, any given night, I'd feel good about playing you 33 to 38 minutes. I just don't think Naz Reid is that player yet.
No, I mean, he's definitely a rotational guy. Well, if you don't get the pick, then obviously you're going to have to, do it other ways, whether it's trade, free agency. And we know he's been aggressive in doing that. But I will say it was, it's hard to draw concrete opinions and conclusions when you're so far out of the race and you're playing teams that maybe quite honestly aren't throwing their best punch at you, but I like the way some of the things we saw down the stretch. I like the way Edwards emerged. I like the way Russell played with Towns, distributed the ball. I still think if they're going to be taken seriously and be a playoff team, they're going to have to become much better defensively, which be with, a full training camp and off season, and Finch is putting in his philosophy and his systems that maybe that will happen. But I definitely feel a heck of a lot better about where they're going right now than when all those guys were injured and you're wondering, like, how does this even work? Or, this doesn't even make sense what they're trying to do. And judging from like all the exit interviews that we heard from Towns and Russell and those guys, I got a sense that there's a little bit of motivation and eagerness for those guys to get back and be together and have a full run at this one, because it was just so disjointed this year. Everything was just completely disjointed until the last couple of weeks, that I think there's some excitement within the group about kind of where they're going. So if they could get that pick, then obviously if you hit it right, that would be a sixth guy that's in their, in their foundation. So, but I think they internally probably feel a little bit better now, having seen this group together and kind of a little bit of idea what you have.
Yeah, and sports are weird. I mean, we've seen teams with high expectations that they don't live up to it. You see a team like the Wild came into the season, let's be honest, not a lot of external expectations, and all of a sudden now they look like a team that's very much in play in the playoffs and with a chance to advance. So we'll see. Chip Scoggins, good stuff. Appreciate you hopping on Daily Delivery again, and we'll be in touch soon. All right.
Thank you, man.
I'd like to welcome back to Daily Delivery for the second time, first time in a while, not because I've forgotten about him or because I didn't want to have him on again. Chicken Fingers 69 from Twitter, longtime blog commenter, internet friend, and all around good guy. Welcome. How are you doing?
I'm all right. I'm not that great a guy. I'm okay.
I think you're pretty good.
But thank you.
I like you. The Sportive podcast, you might recognize him from that as well. But I something you said to me on Twitter caught my eye the other day, as it often does. And you are, I think I tweeted something like the Wild should feel lucky to have split with Vegas. So what I meant by that wasn't that they didn't deserve to win one of those games, because I think based on the way the play went, I feel like 1-1 was about justified. I guess when you score 2 goals in 2 games, it was more my point. 2 goals in 2 road games, you don't win a lot of times in that scenario. But the larger point was from you that you were upset, maybe not specifically about calls, but about the way officiating in the NHL is evolving. Now, I don't watch games with the presupposition that referees are criminals and part of a vast conspiracy to ensure the failure of Minnesota teams, but you do.
That's a mistake.
Chicken Finger 69, I got to ask, have you ever been more angry about the officiating in a hockey game?
I've never been more angry about anything. I know I say it a lot. I know I say it often, but this time I mean it. Never been more angry about anything in my life. And I know what you meant about it, about fairness. But as is my want, I took what you said, shifted it completely, and morphed it into what I wanted you to say.
You don't take like a 180 on it. You go like 120. You take it as far as you want to go without completely twisting it, which is good. It's a subtle art. It's subtle art.
Sure. So I think what I'm frustrated by is watching these NHL playoffs, and specifically the Wild. What I see is an evolution in hockey, in NHL officiating, towards what I call an NBA style of officiating, in the sense that I see Kaprizov getting, just absolutely manhandled. I think I call him a Russian pinata. They're, hacking him every chance you see Peter Angelo just give him a cross-check shiver. Should be a penalty. But, Petrangelo, or however you want to pronounce it, is a established veteran, won a Stanley Cup, an established, in a sense, star in the league, and Kaprizov isn't. And, the NBA, I think that's the style that you see of officiating in the NBA. Now, the NBA isn't for me. I'm not one of those hockey fans that hates the NBA. I'm indifferent towards the NBA.
Sure.
You like it. You enjoy it. I'm happy that you enjoy it. I think we spend a lot of time on the internet being upset about things that other people enjoy. As so long as it doesn't impact me and my enjoyment, I don't care that you like the NBA.
You care that I don't like Justified, though.
I do care. It's silly. silly that you don't like the television show Justified.
And I admit I need to give it another try. I think the problem was, and I think you even have told me this, that it's a little bit of a slow wind up, that once you get several episodes in, then that's when it really kicks in.
I think so. I think that's fair. So I hope that you give it I've given the NBA far more chance than you've given Justified.
That's fair. That's fair.
All right.
But your larger point is a good one, that you feel like the NHL has evolved into this kind of class or star system where there's only one penalty called on each team, or one power play at least for each team in that game of the night, until Vegas gets one very late when Kaprizov gets the gate for tripping. That's a fair call.
It's fair in a sense that same play had been made elsewhere, especially throughout the period. A number of plays that were obvious penalties that, look, if you're going to put the whistle in your pocket, referees, that's fine. I'm okay with that level of hockey, that style of hockey. But then you can't suddenly take it out of your pocket with what it was, a minute and a half left.
Yeah.
It's either put it in your pocket or don't. And just because I think it was Marcia So, who in a sense is a more established player than Kaprizov, I think. Okay, so now you got to make the call. Well, that's silly. Now, again, the NBA, I don't care. If you like it, that's great. Just don't have it impact my game, and I don't have it impact the NHL. And I think I worry that's what the NHL sees the popularity of the NBA and is starting to kind of go towards that. Let's give breaks to established stars, to established players and established teams. And it's not just the Wild game. I watched that Florida Panthers Tampa game. Same thing. Tampa's an established team. It's won a cup. And Florida, I could care less about Florida Tampa, who wins or loses that game. East Coast hockey, Eastern Conference hockey, don't care at all. But I'm impartial in that way. Florida was treated horribly by the refs in that game, or in both games. Washington, Boston, both established teams with established superstars. Marchand hit a guy over the head with the stick, hit him in the head with the stick. And the other guy got a penalty. They both got penalties. Marchand got one also. The other guy, who I don't even remember who it was. And that's kind of my point, is he was such a nameless player. I don't know who he was. His penalty was for literally standing there and getting hit in the head with a stick. That was the coincidental.
Shouldn't have been there. To get hit with that stick.
So my overall point is, throughout the league, what I'm seeing is this, again, it's the equivalent of standing in the lane and James Harden running full speed with the basketball at you and running into and you getting the foul. What exactly are you supposed to do? But he's James Harden, so he gets the call. I don't want that. I'd rather have it just be either put it in your pocket, call a penalty, don't call a penalty. But just because it's a guy that's been in the league or a star and the other guy isn't, let's not go that way just because it's popular in another sport.
Call it both ways, no matter who you. That's only fair. Do you have any hope? Last thing, any hope that this will change? It's Game 3 here at Xcel Energy Center on Thursday. Do you see this sustained mistreatment of the less established Wild continuing, even though they are on their home ice?
I do. I don't see it as a trend that this is I see it as a battleship it just doesn't suddenly turn around. It's going to take years for Gary Bettman to hopefully either be replaced in some sort of coup. And then that's my hope. But, I don't see that happening tomorrow or today. Yeah. But you never know. I don't know what's in the works. I'm not some sort of insider.
If there is a coup, Chicken Finger 69, in the next 24 hours, it's going to be very suspicious, and you're going to be prime suspect number one. Just want you to know that.
Pay attention to my bank accounts, because I need at least $1 million to be involved in this.
Well, you give me a different way to watch the game Thursday night, so I always appreciate your perspectives. Thank you for joining Daily Delivery again today, and we will definitely do this again soon.
Thank you.
Let's finish with the cooler. Twins doubleheader in Anaheim today. Not exactly ideal for a pitching strapped team to have to make a cross-country trip to make up those 2 games they missed because of COVID protocols earlier this season. I think their starters are Lewis Thorpe and Jose Barrios today, but they've got undecided listed for the first 2 games of the Cleveland series, which starts tomorrow. So there you go. Not exactly ideal for a team that's been slumping anyway and doesn't have a ton of pitching. So we'll see what they're able to get done in this doubleheader on Thursday. That'll do it for me today. Hopefully you enjoyed this. Listen in at noon or on the bonus podcast today for a in-depth look at the Twins. Good stuff coming up tomorrow as well. We'll recap Game 3 of Wild Vegas, and I'll see you again then.